There we go. And we're going to be talking about attribution at this point, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages. This gets into how we can actually identify something more about the attackers. Not exactly like, where do you live? We're not doing that. Or, it's the best Batman. Tell me where. Batman. Oh my God. That was more terrifying than anything Christian Bale did in the movies. Oh, geez. I didn't even know I had that in me. Puberty. Puberty must be onsetting at this point. But let's jump into attribution. All right. So before we get into attribution, I want to spend a little bit more time talking about legal issues. And for the record, just so you all know, we will be done a little bit early today. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But we are going to be done a little early today. So just kind of looking at the rate, class has been going, the lab's been going well. So we're doing good. All right. So, whenever we're looking at legal issues, sometimes there's this huge disconnect between what we think is legal in the world and what the law actually says. And many of the assumptions are actually pretty well founded. Like the whole idea of hacking back, that's a bad idea. And if you're learning the CISSP says hacking back is a bad idea. And I think that that's fantastic and that's good. But then hacking back quickly becomes this very large paintbrush that starts to kind of color outside of the lines into other things like attribution, starts coloring outside of the lines into like doing any type of annoyance activity. And then everyone's like, oh no, we shouldn't do any of the cyber deception stuff because we should just continue to buy more products from incredibly large corporations who keep trying to sell us the same crap that keeps failing every year. But hey, that's the way the system works, and that's the way the capitalism cookie crumbles. So when you're looking at all of this, though, I want to show you some existing case law, and we can walk through and see some interesting trends and some of the things that we have may surprise and or amaze you, which depends on your level of surprise and amazability. The first one I want to talk about is the one that we talked about on day one briefly. We're talking about drone Heckenkamp versus the United States of America. F yeah. So Jerome was just a university student doing university student things. I'm kidding. He probably didn't go out and hang out with people or party or do any of those things. But he was hanging out in his dorm room and he was doing bad things. And uh, it, the FBI had this InfraGard meeting. I think it was InfraGard. And one of the systems administrators of the university was at that meeting. And someone from the FBI said, yo, we're seeing attacks coming from your university IP address space. You probably want to get that stuff checked out. And the administrator went back and thought, I should get that stuff checked out. So he started looking around the network, noticed a number of attacks coming from a number of IP addresses. However, it appeared that the IP addresses shifted. Dum dum dum. So the IP address would be attacking here, and then another IP address would attack here, and then a different IP address would attack here. And this wily systems administrators sat down at the switch at the university dorm room where the attacks were coming from and started going through the content addressable memory table, dumped that table, and noticed that those IP addresses always resolved back to the exact same media access control address or MAC address. Now, also, he noticed with that MAC address, it always went back to the exact same switch port. So what was going on is Jerome was shifting his IP address, but not changing his MAC address and not changing his switch port in doing the attack. So the systems administrator picked up the phone and said, mushy mushy, and called the FBI and said, hey, I think I got your kid. I know what dorm room he's in. I'm going to go in the dorm room and I am going to try to figure out exactly what he's doing. Law enforcement said, no, for the love of all that is holy, do not do that. And he said, no, I'm going to do it anyway. They were basically telling him, hey, wait until we get a warrant. Let's do this right. Let's not go in there and just start kicking down doors and accessing his computer. Let's get a warrant. Let's do it right. Let's go through it together. Systems administrator is like, hell to the nah, I know what I'm doing. Went into Jerome Heckenkamp's room. Now, quick question. If you're a university student, do you have any reasonable right to privacy in your dorm room from the university staff? I mean, they can't put cameras up in their room, could they? I mean, right? Right? Anyone? Yes and no, it's complicated. See, here's the problem. Universities, whenever you sign your lease, they can come into your room for pretty much any reason at any time. The reasons basically boils down to one, they own it. Two, they need to be able to do health and wellness checks on their university students. Three, if you had something like a water leak in your room or some kind of weird thing going on, they have to be able to access that room as well. Now, university staff can go in, especially whenever it's dealing with the health and welfare of the university students, because won't somebody think of the children? So this administrator had a legal right where he could, in fact, go into Jerome's room and have the RA open the door so he could go into it. Now, he then sat down at Jerome's computer system and logged into the computer system with the default credentials of temp to gain access to his system. There's a lot going on there. Just don't want to start unpacking it now, but if you're doing hacking and you have a default user ID and password of temp, that's probably bad. I'm just going out there and saying, yeah, yep, Weems said don't use temp. Yep, don't use temp. Now, he sat down at the computer and did not gain access to Jerome's history, to Jerome's files, to anything associated with Jerome himself. He logged in with a different account of temp. When he got into that computer system, he validated the IP address, the MAC address, made sure that that was the system that was doing the attacking, and then logged out and left. Now, the question to everybody, was the evidence that he collected admissible in a court of law? It was admissible. It was admissible for a couple of different things. The reason why it was admissible in court is, number one, he didn't gain access to any private data associated with Jerome. Number two, the judge ruled in this case due to the exigency of the circumstances, and that's just fancy legal speak for saying that there was an urgency to get access to the data, the evidence, because Jerome may have deleted the data. Now, personally, I think that argument's complete bunk and garbage and hokum. We can't forget it's also hokum. But the judge ruled in that case that that evidence was admissible, and the other reason was the administrator was not a member of law enforcement. He wasn't acting on behalf of law enforcement. Also, when Jerome Heckenkamp signed up for university access to the network and signed up for the room, he said that the university could gain access for the health and well-being of the students in the university. Now, you're probably thinking about this, and you're probably thinking to yourself, this seems really bad. His lawyer must have sucked. Yes and no. No, his lawyer was amazing. His lawyer was actually a lady by the name of Jennifer Granick, who worked at the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, associated with this particular case. But yes, his lawyer did suck because he fired one of the best attorneys on the face of the planet because he wanted to defend himself instead. For the record, don't ever defend yourself in court. That's just bad, right? We're not going to do that, okay? Why would you defend yourself? Because he made a bad decision. All right. The next case is Susan versus Absolute. Yeah, there's probably the better thing. Don't ever fire Jennifer Granick. That's probably a bad idea. Susan versus Absolute Software. Susan Clements Jeffrey was a substitute teacher, and she was doing substitute teaching type things. And she was teaching a class, and one of the students came up to her, and he did the whole looking behind the shoulder thing. You know, he came up and he's like, hey. And you just know that if anybody comes up to you and the first thing that they do is look over their shoulders, they're either about to tell you, like, the most racist joke you have ever heard in your entire life, ever, or they're about to ask you to do something that is illegal. One of those two things is going to be true. So no matter what, you got to brace yourself, right? You got to brace yourself. You got to just be like, oh, okay, here it comes, here it comes, and the student went the illegal route, not the racist route, which is great. I think that honestly, if I have to choose, I'd much rather have somebody be like, would you like to buy some cocaine? Rather than telling me a joke. It's like a rabbi, a Catholic priest, and somebody from the Zoroastrian church walks into a bar. You're like, this is going to end poorly. I would rather have them be like, you want some cocaine? And I'd be like, oh, that's a pleasant surprise. Fantastic. So what the student said was, would you like to buy a MacBook Pro for 50 bucks? It's a fully functional MacBook Pro. And if anybody ever tries to sell you a MacBook Pro for $50, you know that is hot, right? You know that that's hotter than a cat on a hot tin roof, but it's hot goods. So Susan Clements Jeffrey was like, oh, that sounds like a fantastic deal. And they met, and I'm not making this up, at a school bus stop, and he gave her a MacBook Pro. Yeah, I just keep spares of these around, just sitting around all the time. He gave her a MacBook Pro. She bought the MacBook Pro at a school bus stop. Then, yeah, to be fair, 50 bucks is 50 bucks, boys and girls. So she then takes this MacBook Pro home and immediately starts Angel, can we do something good for Angel? Like Angel's like the best student I've had in 2024. Like literally, we just got another PDF MacBook Pro voucher. It's just on it. Like now, usually that bit would have been played out by yesterday afternoon. Angel's just taken that bit past being not funny. Now it's just like hilarious. And he's just pushing that bit all the way through. All right. So takes the computer home and starts cyber sexting her boyfriend. Now, on that MacBook Pro, they had Absolute Software, which is like low jack software for computer systems, so you can track where those computers are going. And law enforcement in the school took multiple pictures of Susan Clements Jeffrey in various states of undress and sexual activity. Now, Susan Clements Jeffrey, whenever, all of this went south and they came back to get their computer, was none too happy that there was a lot of sexy time is nice pictures of her with law enforcement and Absolute Software. So she did what any good red-blooded American would do. She sued. And I agree with her. I think she should have sued. So in this particular case, the university and Absolute Software and law enforcement were basically saying, hey, that computer was not hers. That computer belonged to the school. She had no right to privacy on that particular computer system. And in that particular scenario, Judge Walter Rice said, nay. It is one thing to cause a stolen computer system to report its IP address or geographical location in an effort to track it down. It is something entirely different to violate federal wiretapping laws by intercepting the electronic communications of personal use of the stolen laptop. Ooh, we got some interesting things going on here. Got some really interesting things going on here that are going to create some lines in the sand that I think are pretty good. The first thing is, notice the judge said IP address or geographical location information. Let's bring up the laser pointer because I like the laser pointer. Right here. IP address and geographical location. Now, in the DoD world, whenever we're working cases or law enforcement, we're working cases, we phrase it a bit differently. We phrase it signal versus content data, okay? Signal versus content data. Let me explain the difference. Whenever you're looking at signaling data, you generally have no right to privacy for signaling data. What is signaling data? Signaling data is data that you have to give publicly to unknown people in order for your data to go from point A to point B. So if I'm sending out a packet and I'm routing that packet out on the open internet, I have to give out my IP address. And I have to give my IP address out to a whole bunch of random stranger ISPs for that data to get there. All right. Same thing with cell phone communications. If you're using a phone, you have to give out all kinds of different information, including your location, to random, strange, like telco companies for your cell phone to work. And that makes sense because your cell phone's location will determine which tower you're attached to. You have to give that information, right? So signaling data, I wouldn't go so far as to say full metadata, but it's metadata that's specifically utilized for transport of communications. So let me give you another example. On the outside of an envelope, right? So if we have this envelope, it has my name, it has the address of Black Hills Information Security here in Sturgis, South Dakota. I have no right to privacy at all for what's on the outside of that envelope. None. Because that information, my address, has to be public, has to be shared in order for it to go where it needs to go. Because if this is private, if this information on the outside of an envelope is private and protected, then at that particular point, you just can't get anything to go anywhere at all, right? So when you're looking at IP address information has a much lower privacy standard than almost anything else because it has to be made public. Does that make sense to everybody? I think Phil's got it. So the information is necessary to transfer the information. So Anita, let's play it this way. Let's say that you tried to hide the information on the outside of the envelope, like where it's coming from and who it's going to. Would that envelope ever get there? Anita, like if this was private, this is my private data. No, you have to make that data public for it to go there. So you have no right to privacy for that data. The same thing is true for packets, right? If you're looking at IP address information, if you're looking at TCP information, what port it's going to, your ISP needs that data. You cannot like use a VPN, completely hide everything about all your packets from your ISP. Now you can wrap it in a VPN, but that's just wrapping it in another envelope, right? And then once it gets on the other side of that VPN, it's still public because the VPN is going to tear that data off and then it's going to be out there and you'll be able to see it. All right. Even if you use PGP, Weems, even if you would use, that would be content data. All right. That would be content data. I don't know if I should get into this. I don't know. I know it seems like I'm ranting all the time. Do you guys want me to rant at you some more? Like this is a true rant when we're talking about this stuff. Okay. Here we go. So signaling versus content data. Whenever you're looking at content data, that would be the application payload, right? So if you're looking at trying to look at this as it relates to packets and how it actually works, you would look at it as what is inside that application. So your TCP IP 802, 802.1x header, 802.2 header rather, all of that's 802.11, all of that stuff is public, right? But that actual application data, what is in your HTTP packet, that would be private. That's content data. That's content data. Now, here's the rant. How many of you have actually learned the OSI model? I feel so bad talking about this. I'm not going to talk about the person at all. Okay, the OSI model is a lie. The OSI model is wrong. The OSI model should not be used at all to communicate how packets work whatsoever. Not at all. Stop. Don't ever use it again. Let me show you. So here's a wonderful IEEE article that breaks it down. So the OSI model basically was started back in like 1965 with guys who dressed like this. All right. It's before any packets or anything that was ever out there on the internet ever did anything. These guys were coming up with what the OSI model would be. Right. So basically, it was devised 35 years ago and it was never adopted. The OSI model was never adopted, okay? Ever. In fact, if you read this article, and all of you should read this article because it starts in 1960. It goes through all the people that tried to establish the OSI model. And then it talks about how OSI is a fundamentally different model from TCP/IP. It is not the same thing. So when you have people that are telling you, please do not throw stale pizza away, and this is how it handles between this, it's all crap. Doesn't work that way. That's not how the model works at all, okay? Because TCP/IP rolls absolutely everything into a four-layer model. So when you're looking at it, you have network access, the internet, the transport layer, and then the application layer would encapsulate application, presentation, and session. And even at that, your application vendors don't ever call their crap application, presentation, and session. Ever. No, no, no. OSI is not TCP/IP. It is not TCP/IP. In fact, there was an RFC from the United States government back in 1980, I want to say four, that basically the United States government was trying to force the entire internet for government computers to use the OSI model because the people on OSI were part of it. So right here, the National Research Council in 1985 told people that we need to transition away from TCP/IP and move towards the OSI model. All right. So if you go to RFC 939, it clearly differentiates that these are separate protocols. OSI is separate from TCP/IP. All right, there we go. So that's why whenever we're talking about signaling versus content data, the TCP/IP model makes so much more sense. Okay, it makes so much more sense. So if you're looking at it, the transport, internet, and network access layers are the layers that you have no right to privacy on. The application layer would be the content data associated with it. And I need all of you to take this fire that I have and go forth until we have eradicated the OSI model from being taught anywhere. The reason why you're still taught it today is because universities started teaching it in the 60s. They continued to teach it in the 70s. They continued to teach it in the 80s. And one of the hardest things in the world is for a university professor to go, hey, that's not something we use anymore. I have to change my curriculum. They never want to do that. All right. So OSI, not a thing, never was adopted. It's TCP/IP or bust, ladies and gentlemen. So there you go. So that's the difference between signaling and content data. So when the judge is talking about that, if we go back to the TCP/IP four-layer model, as God intended us to do, anything that's an application, protected. Anything that's transport, internet, or network access, not protected as well. All right, so OSI is in the CISSP curriculum. I'm coming for them. Oh, I'm coming. I'm actually going to do a webcast that's like, this needs to stop. We need to stop teaching this because I have people all the time when they're trying to learn packets and Wireshark. They're like, where do I create a filter for the presentation layer? You don't, because Wireshark's TCP/IP. It's not OSI based. All right. So in this particular case, it really, really, really set up the bright line, IP address, geographical information, not gaining access to the actual content data as well. Another example, 1999. We're gonna party like it's 19. Old, but it's laws, folks. I mean, good God, if you look at the recent Supreme Court justice decisions, they were referencing crap from before the United States was a country. So let's just say that, whenever the law and judges are working, they pull out some deep cuts, deep cuts. All right. So we're going through looking at the World Trade Organization had a DOS attack, right? From a group of people called E-Hippies. It was a different time, ladies and gentlemen, just a different time out there. So this particular hosting service provider, Connexon, reflected the attack back to the E-Hippies website. Once again, 1999, they actually had a web server and they were DOSed by Connexon. Now, Connexon was not prosecuted for this particular case. And the reason why I like to bring this up is when you do bad things to bad groups, they tend not to show up to court and press charges against you. They just don't. It just doesn't happen. A clear example of that is an ex parte injunction. So, an ex parte injunction is a restraining order against a party that you do not expect to show up in court. So, if you have a bunch of hackers and they're doing hacker things, they're hanging out, they're dressing in leather, they're painting their nails black and putting black electrical tape on it, they're getting all moody, whatever you think a hacker looks like. Fine, just go ahead and go with that mental image. But if they're doing hacker things and they're having a hacker good time, you don't expect them, like when a lawsuit pops up, to be like, oh, oh, Turbo Crash 92, we need to go to court in DC. Quick, to the jet. They don't do that, right? They're not going to come to court because they're not that dumb. They're dumb. Don't get me wrong. They are dumb. They're just not that dumb. So in this particular situation with the Waledac botnet, the court issued a temporary restraining order ex parte against the people that were running the Waledac botnet. Now, what happened is Microsoft, working in conjunction with the United States Marshals, who actually enforces those particular restraining orders, they took multiple different technical measures to degrade the botnet. They did things like taking over the DNS servers that the botnet was using. They did things like push code to multiple systems to erase the botnet from those systems. Now, if you go back to the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, if we look at the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986, all right? So this is not the actual law. I want to read the actual law because that's fun. This isn't the law either, all right? I'm going to try my best to go through, and I got to find a text of the actual law. This is a lot easier whenever I'm not teaching and clicking on links and doing things. Nope, that's not it either. I want the whole thing. All information. Like all information except text. All right, I'll just do it the best I can from memory. All right, let's see what I can do. So the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, it impacts computer systems, first and foremost, that are protected computer systems. What is a protected computer system? So happy that you asked. A protected computer system is a computer system that's utilized in one of two ways. Either one, it's used in a nuclear power plant. That's kind of a bit specific, but it's 1986. Or it's a computer system that's part of interstate commerce. Now, which computers out there are part of interstate commerce? Which computers would be part of the Interstate Commerce Act? All of them. Oh, I think we got it. Here's the actual text. Of course, we went to Cornell. Yes. Here we go. Now, they're accessing a computer system without authorization or exceeding authorized access. I'm going to talk about that here in just a couple of seconds. And as I said, any data restricted in paragraph Y, section 11 of the Atomic Energies Act, which is just straight up weird, or accesses the computer system. And it also is in here for interstate commerce, but that's in the definitions down below. All right. So basically it means any and all computers. Like the only way that you would have a computer that's not protected under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986 is if you built a computer system in your house from wood that you harvested on your own property. And even then might be a little bit iffy. So it impacts all computer systems. Now, it says knowingly accessed a computer system without authorization. So when Microsoft gained access to these computer systems that were part of a botnet, technically they were in violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986 because they were accessing those computer systems without permission and exceeding the authorization that they had. Josh says no victim, no crime. Wrong. All right, so we're going to delve into why this actually works. And in order for this to actually go through, we're going to have to talk a little bit about maritime law. Now, if I'm like rolling out on the seas, like I've got my yacht, I've got my boat, I'm on a boat, and I've got my flippy floppies and I've got my dinghy, there are two groups of people that I can open fire on without declaring war on the open seas. What are those two groups of people? I'm on a boat. Pirates, you got it? Good. Good. Other group? Pirates and mutants. Did you just say fish? Oh my God. Slave traders. Pirates and slave traders. Those are the two groups that I can fire on. Let's focus on pirates. All right, let's focus on pirates. So, and people are like, slave traders. Well, this is the 1800s. There's no slave trade. There's more slaves on the planet today than there was back in the time of slavery in the United States. Look it up. Scary stuff. We're not going to go there, but read. It's crazy. Now, let's say that I have my boat and my boat has a big gun on it, right? So if I'm on my boat with my gun and I have a pirate coming up after me on another yacht they got from some kind of executive somewhere, all right? And I shoot at that yacht and I sink that yacht. Does the original owner of that yacht have any legal recompense against me for sinking their yacht? No, they don't. They don't. Because as soon as your boat is taken over by pirates, then it's no longer your boat. So I've done a lot of work with SIPRI, the Stockholm Institute for Peace, and we've had lots and lots of meetings with all kinds of like boring meetings, with all kinds of people talking about international maritime law, and they're starting to apply international maritime law to computers as well. This gives organizations like Microsoft authorization to reach into computer systems that are compromised by hackers for the explicit purpose of removing the hackers from the computer system. They're looking at computers as pirate ships moving forward. So pretty crazy stuff. All right. All this also comes back to what is the authorization and where did you define the bounds of your organization and all that stuff. And that really gets us into the game of warning banners again. What are the warning banners that we display whenever people attempt to access our computer systems, right? So if you look at it, it's kind of funny. Look at a VPN warning banner or a warning banner for an SSH server. A lot of them say that the access to this computer system is only for authorized individuals. That's great. But a lot of warning banners go a little bit further and they say that we will validate the security configuration of the computer system. You can actually sneak in some things that say we will also track your IP address and geographical location of your computer system. And you're doing this already. With Microsoft, they're checking your IP address when you log into Office 365. You can do geofencing of IP addresses, so only certain IP addresses from certain parts of the world are allowed to access your website, and on and on and on. You can do this through things like OpenVPN scripts. Microsoft, since 2008, if you're using network access protection, has the capability to reach into your computer, run a whole bunch of scripts to validate that computer before letting it join the network. All of those scripts can be very, very useful for tracking down hackers on your systems as well. All of this also ties into intellectual property, right? You can do and look at callbacks. Whenever you're running Microsoft products, they're talking constantly back to Microsoft's Genuine Advantage program to make sure that they're properly licensed. That is a beacon. That same technique can be used to track your intellectual property in the form of a word web bug beaconing back as well. Software that is tracking on phones. Your phones are tracking you constantly, like everywhere you go. They're tracking you dozens of times per second on your phone, right? That's just how they work, unfortunately, right? You give up that privacy anytime that you try to gain access to a map that shows you where the nearest Starbucks is as well. We aren't talking about hacking per se. We aren't talking about hacking back at all. But at this point, we are definitely having a conversation about how can we get the attackers to give up their location in a way that's legal, that we don't need to throw in a whole bunch of attorneys to get into the process of, is this okay? Is this not okay? Is this bad? Is this good? And we could just do this, especially if you have a warning banner saying that you're going to be doing these things as well. So how could this actually go wrong? mistakes and unintended consequences. Putting malware up in a website that is easily accessible to anybody and everybody is a bad time for everybody. I told you I had a company I was doing some cyber deception and attribution stuff with, and we created some software, gave it to them, and we said, hey, put this up on your website and a disallow, no index, no follow directory, robots.txt, don't make it publicly accessible. And they put that tracking software on the front page of their website, and they tracked like 6,000 people coming to their website and then sent me the logs. And they're like, which of these is the hacker? I, I honestly have no idea. I don't even know where to start with that, right? Full attacks against an attacker's IP address. Most of the time, an attacker is using a proxied, compromised computer system to attack your computer system. You need to be aware of that before you just jump off and start attacking them as well. Don't ever crash systems, right? Gaining access to a hacker's computer, which, as I said, is fun. Not legal, shouldn't do it, but it's fun. But crashing their computer systems means that you're probably going to end up crashing someone else's computer. A web bug is a little tiny piece of software on a website that'll actually beacon back whenever someone accesses it as well. All right. Hey, those pencils look familiar, Nerf. Those are fantastic pencils. Too cool to do drugs. Would anybody like a pencil like that that's the same thing, but too cool to do cybercrime? Where are my pencils? Right here. Here you go. It is an absolutely shameless plug, but you got to admit those pencils are pretty fire. All right. Yeah, there you go. All right. So we want to be careful, right? We don't want to be doing persistent long-term access, and we want to be working within the bounds of annoyance, attribution, and attack. So when we want to do something and we want it to be legal, we have some things at our disposal. One, we should be discussing, right? We should be having conversations like this class is a discussion as well. Document what you're going to do. Come up with a plan, come up with a change management plan, and implement it. Continue to consult with other people as you're doing these things. You're like, have we crossed any lines on that as well? Just you have the capability of working with it. Do not hide. If you're working in a gray area of the law and something that's brand new and it's cutting edge and it's all of those different things, and you're hiding it from management, you're hiding it from your coworkers, if law enforcement and the court system doesn't have existing case study to work off of, but you show that you have a consciousness of guilt, at that particular point, they will totally use that crap against you, right? And they're going to use it to actually develop their interpretations of the law as well. Also, don't be evil. This one is hard. And a lot of people, whenever they finally get to the point where they can gain access to a hacker's computer system, they're so excited and they just want to hurt the hacker. It's a lot of times when we're looking at hackers and we're looking at ransomware, we're looking at all these hacks and breaking into our organizations, it is very common for people to feel helpless, like there's nothing that they can do. And then finally, whenever you get to the point where you can do something against that hacker, embarrass that hacker, dump their browser history, do all kinds of evil. There's something that's evil and cathartic about wanting to do that, but don't be evil. Because if you start doing those evil things and things end up going to court, it will absolutely come against you at that point as well. Going next level with the hacker hoodie. I have almost all of the Wild West Hacking Fest hacker hoodies here. Should I wear the hoodie? Does it make me look like more of a hacker? Yeah. All right. So let's talk about attribution and we're going to get into a lab here in a little bit. This is the case I was actually on. It was kind of a rough case, working with Erratic and Paige Thompson, but well, Paige Thompson and Erratic are the same person. Erratic's or hacker handle. And it was really, really, really hard. Look makes me look like a moody emo team. Thanks, Shoshana. And what had happened was Paige Thompson was using anonymizing proxy Tor and iPredator VPN to attack Capital One. And doing all of this, people were, she went on Slack and immediately started talking to her hacking and security group, and were basically, yeah, the EU store, we're just getting it up and running. We have to source a bunch of suppliers in the EU, so we're getting there. We're getting there. But you have backdoors and breaches, and you have those things. So she was on her Slack channel and she was talking about all the things that she was doing, and her friends were saying, "Hey, you're doing some sketchy shit. Don't go to jail, please." And Erratic respond said, "I just want to get it off my server. That's why I'm archiving it. It's all encrypted. I just don't want it around." And then she said, "I basically strapped myself with a bomb vest, effing dropping Capital One docs and admitting it. I want to distribute these buckets, and I think first their social security numbers, full names, and dates of birth." So this is in Department of Justice, this is like a slam dunk style case, right? And but I like to point out a couple of things. One, she was using anonymizing proxies. She was using iPredator, or she was using Tor to access and do a number of her attacks and trying to hide what she was doing. So yes, attackers are using those types of technologies. The other thing that I like to call out is she was admitting it on Twitter and on Slack. Like, oh God. Remember I said criminals are dumb. Sometimes they're not that dumb, but it's just a VPN software. It's like what are some VPN software programs that are out there, like Thundar or whatever? There's a bunch of VPNs that are out there. Nord. It's like Nord. It's just one of those like that. So why attribution? Honestly, the game is pretty simple. Get the bad guys. At least give an IP address or a location of where these attackers actually are. And yeah, we can actually get that location even if the attacker is coming through a VPN. And I'm going to show you how that works here in just a little bit. So why would we do this? One of the reasons is we want to know what they're actually after on our computer systems. And then we also want to understand what it is that they already have on our computer systems. And this helps us design better defenses and understand how much we need to allocate to this. Now, if we're fighting Tor, right? If we're dealing with an attacker that's using Tor, we have to keep a couple of things in mind. First, a lot of organizations just assume right off the bat that an attacker is using Tor, and there's absolutely nothing that you could possibly do to ever find the attackers and what they're doing. That's just like, Madagascar. I'm going to go to my dying hole. And seriously, don't think that way. Because if you actually do learn how Tor works, most of the time when attackers are attacking, they actually aren't using Tor, number one. And number two, there's some things that we can look at that will help us identify the fact that they aren't coming through Tor. So, or if they are, I'll explain that all. Just give me a second. Let's go through it. So if you're looking at how Tor works, Tor basically makes a connection into an entrance node, and then it bounces around 4 times. I know the graphic doesn't have that, but it's from the EFF. We're going to roll with it. Bounces around 4 times inside of that node, and then it pops out on an exit node. So they're using, actually, a lot of times they don't use anything. I know that that's scary, but when you go through Tor, let's just ask people a couple questions. How many of you have actually used Tor? Let's get a show of hands. How many people have used Tor here? Yeah, a lot of people. Not today, FBI. Not today. Now, is Tor, when you were using it, what you would call snappy? Was it a pleasant, fast experience in surfing the internet? Oh God, no. No. And if you're using a Tor browser, almost always a lot of the Tor browsers that are out there will disable all JavaScript. So if I disable all JavaScript on a website, exactly how much of that website am I actually able to interact with, right? It's like next to nothing. It's almost nothing, right? So when you're looking at it, Tor slows things down, number one. And then number two, you also end up in a situation where if you're going to use it successfully, many times you have to disable a large part of capability to be able to do it. Pub just said is said to be super fast in DC. I also hear it's wicked fast in Beijing. Huh, that's weird. All right, so let's keep going with Tor. So Tor is not just used by proxies. So if an attacker is going to attempt to use, or browsers, if an attacker is going to attempt to use Tor, they want their hacking tools to go through Tor as well, right? So this can also be used by other applications, especially if you use like a SOC 5 proxy and proxy chains. So what would happen is you would run a tool like Nmap, run it through proxy chains, it would go through SOCs and connect to Tor and use it that way. So if you're trying to use Tor, you can do it using a number of tools that aren't even browsers at all. You could tunnel Nessus, all of these different things. And if it works right, great. That's awesome. That's wonderful. It's not done correctly, kind of becomes a little bit of a nightmare for the attacker in the detects as well. So let's take a look at a standard Nmap scan. When Nmap attempts to ping a system, it does this in 4 steps, always, with a standard SYN scan as root. So whenever you look at SOC 5 and you look at proxy chains, you look at a lot of stuff that uses Tor, it's going to wrap the TCP connect function on your computer system. It's going to wrap the TCP connect function out there. So this first packet that it sends an ICMP echo request. Is that ICMP echo request going to go through the TCP connect function? Anyone? What do you think? Is ICMP going to go through the TCP connect function? No, it's not. That's because ICMP is not TCP. It's different. It's a different protocol. All right. ICMP is a different protocol. So that means ICMP echo request is not going through. Neither is ICMP timestamp request. So neither of these 2 packets are going to go through the TCP connect function. Let's move up to this packet right here, this ACK packet. Is an ACK packet going to go through the TCP connect function? Is an ACK packet going to go through TCP connect? Is an ACK packet going to go through with TCP connect? No, it's not. Because if we're going to start a session, if we're going to create a connection with TCP, what is the first packet we would send? What is the first packet that it would send? A SYN packet. Very good. A SYN packet. You got it. So finally, that brings us to the last one I want to talk about. We send a SYN packet to the target company. Is that going to go through? Let's go through and share my slides again. Is that packet getting away from Discord and going to my slides? The last packet is a SYN packet. Is that packet going to go through the TCP connect function? And you can't see it because it's stuck on Discord. There we go. Is that SYN packet going to go through the TCP connect function? Is it? Anyone? Bueller? Pop quiz. Answer is no. It won't go through it either. Not a single one of the packets that you have with Nmap. In fact, none of the packets in Nmap at all go through the TCP connect function when you run as root. So let me show you. Let's go man Nmap. Right? So if we're looking at TCP connect function, the only way that Nmap actually sends things through the TCP connect function is when you do a lowercase s capital T, right? It's lowercase s capital T. At that point, all of the traffic that Nmap sends that's TCP in nature will go through the operating system's TCP connect function. Whenever Nmap runs as root or administrator, it bypasses the TCP connect function completely and it accesses TCP sockets raw. It does raw TCP socket access. So I went through this whole entire thing to just kind of share and explain to you that if you see a lot of packets coming really fast, the attacker's not going through Tor. If you see the ICMP packets and the HTTP, you see the 3-way handshake and all that's not going through Tor. It just isn't. So the reason why this matters is because hackers do this and they think that they're going through Tor. They think that they're going through anonymizing proxies. And the reality is they're actually making raw access to your environment and they don't even know how their tools work. The first time I ever saw this was at DEF CON in 2008. That was a really cool DEF CON. I think it was 2008 or it was 2007. It was the one that I presented on a panel on cyber war, nation state level. And I got to meet one of the Mythbusters. That was super cool. And I saw another presentation in a room of like 500 people where they were doing the proxy chains thing that looks like this proxy chains Nmap. And they didn't do the stuff right here. And they were scanning and attacking Microsoft, and it was going back really fast, and everyone was doing a standing ovation. And I'm sitting there in the audience going, that ain't right. That ain't how that looks. There's something very wrong here. So yeah, attackers talk about doing this stuff all the time. They do it wrong, and it means that we can identify who they are. Now, the right way to do it, if you're so inclined, is to do proxy chains Nmap, no pings, full connect scan, choose one or two ports and run it one at a time. And it is very, very, very slow out there. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about honey tokens. We did the canary tokens lab yesterday, right? We went through, we set up a whole bunch of canary tokens, and we're going to kind of extend that canary token idea a little bit by enabling it on a file share as well on that. Would I say that thing in quotes? No, I'm not going to say that thing in quotes because you're trying to trick me to say hot nation state on nation state action, and I'm not going to fall for it. Not going to fall for it. Not going to do it. No, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. All right. So canary tokens we played with, and you could see how these things get triggered. But you can implement the entirety of the canary tokens engine on your own servers, right? You can build a canary token server from scratch in your environment. You can set it up and you can run it, which is really, really, really super cool. You basically create the executables, you set up the triggers, you set it up. Let's talk about this a little bit, and then we're going to get to a lab. This is fun because you can create canary tokens all day long, like an executable that's called free candy, which I think is fun. That's great. But the other thing that you can do is some applications like OpenVPN allow you to put scripts in your VPN config where you can execute random commands of your choosing. So if you have an attacker that's trying to break into your environment, you can give OpenVPN configs that are honeypot configs accessible on websites, and you can execute a variety of scripts. So like this one, we can execute PowerShell. We can execute Python. We can execute straight up command interpreter on that system. So one of the tricks that we've done is we've actually created OpenVPN configs, seeded them on the internet. Attackers find the fake VPN configs, use the VPN configs, and it dumps their wireless profile history. It dumps their all the preferred network lists. No, you could use Web Shell for this, Weems, but you just put it inside the VPN config, the openvpn.conf file. You can set that up and you can put any scripts that you want. Most attackers won't even bother reading the actual script to see what it does, but you can totally set this up and entrap the attacker on that as well. All right. So how would you do this? Well, you would take something like that OpenVPN config inside of an executable, and you would run a command like netsh wlan show networks mode equals bssid. When you run that command, this command right here, netsh wlan show networks mode equals bssid, it dumps every wireless network around them. It dumps every wireless network around them. So you're going to create that script. So the attacker runs that script, and then you're going to put it somewhere on your website, like, disallow, no index, no follow, admin page, admin directory. And the attackers are going to go right to those different pages and to those different directories. And they're going to see that there's, VPN config. And as soon as they run that VPN config, even if they're coming at your network through Tor, it's going to fire this command, and it's going to basically dump all of their wireless profiles to you. Now you can feed that information into Google, and you can totally get geolocation within 20 meters of where they're at, which is just crazy. You can do the cloned website trick. I showed you this on the Canary Tokens website, where you can create that JavaScript that as soon as the website is cloned, the website that's doing the cloning, the cloned website itself, will beacon back, and you'll be able to stop these attacks before they even hit your system. So how does that work with a wireless profile? Well, whenever you run NetSH WLAN show networks, it dumps all the wireless networks in their signal strength. So what Google does is it looks at the size of the circles and it knows where the locations of the wireless networks are, and it sees where the signal strength and everything intersects, and they say this is the location of where the user is. This is what your Windows computer does, this is what your phone does, this is what all of these things do. So it's super easy for it to work. All right, so I want to get us to our first lab of the day, kind of get rolling on some stuff. So the first lab that we're going to do is we're going to, this is a stupid lab. We're going to do a honey share. An awesome lab, actually, but there's something really dumb that happens here, and it's a Microsoft dumb thing. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a share. So ideally, you would create a honey share in your environment, and then you would create a honey doc, and you would put it on that honey share as well. Yes, it does. But you can use NetSH WLAN to export wireless profiles. Nora, do this instead. So you can export your profile with this command right here, and you don't have to be administrator for that. There you go. So I want you to do this lab where you're going to create a share that is kind of a tripwire share in an environment, and we're going to be using the Impacket suite to do this. So you're going to run Impacket, you're going to start the SMB server, you're going to give it a name of secret and all of those different things, and then you're going to attempt to access it from your Windows computer system like an attacker would. They would attempt to identify the shares, they would try to jump that share, gain access to it as well, and you're going to see an error. That error is hilarious. It's everything's fine. Go back and check your Impacket server, and it's going to log the name of the system, the user that attempted to authenticate. You're going to have the date timestamp associated with it and the password hash of the user that attempted to do it. This is all good stuff from a tripwire perspective to do that initial forensics investigation. So the lab with the break is going to take us, let's go ahead and do 30 minutes, y'all. So 30 minutes lab and break, and then we will continue. Right, I think we can cut the cut the timer a little short now. All right, so let's go through this lab. We actually have two labs that we're going to be doing today. We have this one, and then we're also going to be doing how we can actually set up honey files in an environment, kind of once again taking this idea and really instrumenting files across your environment, where you can set it up as a callback, as a canary token, you can set it up as a share, and then you can set up event logging around the file being accessed as well. So we have a lot to do with that. So let's go ahead and let's open up our terminal. And then we're going to get our IP address of our Linux computer system, because we're going to create the fake share on our Linux computer system, and then we're going to access that share the way an attacker would from the Windows computer system. So there we go. Set up. Get my IP address. There we go. Next, we're going to become root. We have to become root because we're going to be running a service on a low privileged port. CD into the opt Impacket examples directory, because that's just the software, the Python libraries that allow us to emulate SMB servers. And then we start it up. Now it takes a few seconds for it to run and get going. But once that's up and running, we have a full Windows SMB share sitting on the network. Now, usually what an attacker would do if they wanted to find all of the different shares on the local network is they would run the netview command. Now, usually netview is done where you go 127.0.0.1 and you're saying these are all of the shares that exist on this local computer system. I think we could do like net use and then add one. But if you run net view without any options like that, it's going to query the entire local network for all of the shares that are available in all the systems that are on the exact same network. This takes a few seconds and it's not going to pull back anything at all. At least it shouldn't. Otherwise, students' computers are all sitting on the exact same network, which would be a bit spooky. So that's going to take a little while, but I'm just going to kind of jump off here for a second, and we'll just open up another terminal. But yeah, that's how they would find this share. Post exploitation is they would run net view. Now we're going to use the net use command to attempt to access the share on our Linux computer system. But I need to change my IP address to be that of the Linux computer system right here, right? So we're going to take that, and I ran the command on Apple to copy. There we go. And I am going to delete the IP address in the instructions, and I'm going to replace it with the one that we have. Now, this gets to one of my favorite things about this particular lab is the error that Microsoft throws here. So in a second, Microsoft is going to pop out an error, and it's going to say, hey, you can't access this shared folder because your organization's security policies block authenticated guest access. These policies help protect your PC from unsafe or malicious devices on the network. I think it's absolutely hilarious for me where Microsoft is like, you know what? I'm not going to access that share. I'm not going to access that share you because it's dangerous. Don't you know that trying to just access shares randomly on the network is a bad idea? Bad person, bad. Meanwhile, in the background, what Microsoft actually did is it dumped all of your creds. So you can see we have the user, we have the net NTLM v2 password hash. It literally tried to authenticate to the system and pushed it all the way through. Good God. So yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that we have a Windows computer system that is saying, hey, you can't do that because it's insecure. And then meanwhile, it does all the insecure things on the back end there. So that is the lab whenever we're trying to set this up. Yet they share your hash. Exactly. Developers, 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 developers. And that's what you get. That's what you get when you hire dumb developers. All right. That really didn't work out. Like the pacing and the timing on that Paramore like reference just didn't work. I can do better. I can do better, everybody. I will do better in the future. All right. So some additional things that we kind of talk about these honey shares, these honey files on the outside of a network. This is BHIS. We do a lot of honeypot stuff at Black Hills Information Security. And this is from a couple of years ago where we had someone that was cloning our websites and was trying to do a spear phishing attack against Black Hills Information Security, and we were able to track the entire group and the IP addresses of all of their different spear phishing servers. And not a single spearfish made it in that day, which I thought was a good day. All right, so question was, all right, net NTLM v2 hash is different every time, but net NTLM v1 are the same. When I run the net use command several times, I'm getting different output. Yes. So whenever you're looking at net NTLM, there is no such thing as a net NTLM v2 or net NTLM v1 hash. The only hashes that Windows actually has are NT hashes and landman hashes, full stop. Whenever you move into landman, net NTLM, and net NTLM v2, those are authentication protocols. And underneath those protocols, landman and net NTLM are the exact same authentication protocol. The only difference is the hash that it's sending in that authentication protocol. In landman, it's using the landman hash, and on NT and net NTLM, it's sending the NT hashes. Net NTLM net v2, however, is doing a bunch of other things that include things like timestamp. But here's the problem. Whenever you have the net NTLM v2 hash, or the authentication sending hashes, because all of it is sent clear text, you can reverse it. And you can reuse those hashes using a tool called NT Relay X. Actually, let me just show you a YouTube video. All right. And here is a full YouTube video going from the outside of an environment all the way into the inside of an environment. And as part of that video, when we get to this section, we actually laterally move through a tool called NTLM Relay X right there. And with this, let me mute. So at this particular point in the video, we're relaying those NTLM v2 password hashes, and we're relaying them through the attacker system and then sending it to all of the other systems in the environment as well. So it should be going. Come on, guys, hurry up. And this is what it looks like. So you can see that we're running NTLM relay X. We got a bunch of targets, and you can see all of these different authentication requests coming in via responder. And then right here is where we start taking over systems by relaying those authentication hashes. Anytime now. There we go. On the left-hand side, you can see the relay of the password hashes. And you can also see that we're dumping the password hashes for the local system for every time we relay the password hashes as well. So if you want to see what this attack looks like from beginning to end, you can go to that video, and it shows how we break into an environment from the outside coming in all the way through. So that is a long answer whenever you're asking about NTLM v2, net NT password hashes and landman password hashes. But I think it's important to understand how that authentication actually works as well. So there we go. All right. So with Word docs, we already played around a little bit with Word docs with the Canary Tokens lab that we did yesterday, but we're creating documents. And if somebody interacts with those documents, then we can get that document to beacon back. And if we go to Canary Tokens, super easy to do that through PDFs. I don't know if Angel has any PDFs ready to go, but we can create a document in a PDF. We can create a document in a Word document, Excel spreadsheet, and so on, that allows us to get those things to bop back to us as well. So let's talk a little bit about location based on IP address. Now, if I get the IP address of a hacker, is that location usually a really accurate location? So geolocation based on IP address, is that pretty accurate, or is it pretty far off? No, it's usually not. And I want to talk about why it's not here as I take off my hacker hoodie. So let's kind of cover why it doesn't work really well to do geolocation based on simple IP address. But I know this sounds weird. Even if I can't get really good geolocation by an IP address, I can get really accurate geolocation based on IP address. Like, okay, that sounds weird. Stick with me. So back at the last DerbyCon, which I'm probably never going to get rid of these slides just from a nostalgic perspective. At the last DerbyCon, my brother was staying with me. He's sales director here at Black Hills Information Security. And I woke him up ridiculously early in the morning with a word web bug to have him open up the document so I could get this trigger. So the trigger fires up, and it gave me the IP address of the hotel that we were staying at. All right. Now, the problem with it is if I take that IP address and I use that IP address to do geolocation, it came out here. I mean, this is in Louisville, right? DerbyCon was all the way over here, kind of where the U and the I is, right? So way far away. That is not accurate at all. Now, the question that we need to ask is why? Why is geolocation based on IP address hot garbage? The reason why it's really, really bad is because of something called dynamic host configuration protocol. Whenever you have an ISP that's handing out IP addresses, they're handing out those IP addresses from a pool of IP addresses. And the ISP tends not to do any geolocation at all for any of those IP addresses because they're dynamic. It wouldn't make any sense. If the external facing IP address for a hotel is going to change once every 10 days or so, there's no reason to go through the effort to try to set up really solid geolocation based upon those IP addresses. So this makes sense whenever you think about it. However, if we think about it even further, we can use a tool called traceroute to that IP address in order to get really far more accurate geolocation of said IP address. How the hell does that work? Let me show you. So whenever you traceroute, it's going to give you, so if I go to my Windows system, use a wonderful little tool that I learned how to use from Next Gen Hacker 101 called Tracer T. Open up command prompt. So if I do tracer T and I go to 8.8.8.8, This is going to show me all of the routing hops between this particular computer system and 8.8.8.8, which is Google, right? Now, these are all routers on the internet. And here in a couple of seconds, it's going to jump into the Google network, and then it's going to stop. That's actually a lot of hops coming from this system. There we go. So it's 15 routing hops. Now, that end routing hop may be super duper inaccurate, like this level of inaccurate. It's getting me in Louisville, but it's not getting me anywhere closer to that attacker at all. However, if I get my laser pointer working, right, and instead of focusing on that end IP address of the hotel, if I instead go one hop back, what is that hop? So this is the hop right here, 74, 143, 15, 100. That's the hotel. What is the hop that is right before that end hop? Anyone know? It's the edge router for the ISP. All right. Now, while IP addresses that are pushed out via DHCP tend to be very, very heavily inaccurate, I like geolocation, the location of routing hops for ISPs tend to be a lot more accurate. So this is the location of the ISP's pop. This is the hotel my brother and I were staying at. So we went from a geolocation that was like from the middle of the city, miles and miles away, to a block, well, a little bit less, a little bit more than a block away. Now that's much more accurate geolocation in that situation. So by simply backing up a little bit and not trying to geolocate the specific IP address, if we go back one little bit and we instead focus on geolocating the IP address of the edge router of the ISP, they tend to have far more accurate location there as well. Now, when you're looking at word web bugs and you're looking at them with canary tokens, some of them don't work like that very well at all. Weems just asked, how accurate are things like GeoIP systems? Usually they're pretty accurate for things like the edge routers and the gateways and the points of presence for big ISPs. They tend not to be very accurate at all for the actual like IP addresses themselves. So if we're looking at using word web bugs, a lot of the ones that we utilize in canary tokens, they're great, they're nice and all, but the problem with them is they tend to work only for Word document processors. Let's say that we wanted to target Linux, something else like a Mac system as well. Well, it turns out you can do that as well with canary tokens. We already did the canary tokens and web bugs. So let's talk more about web bugs and the different structures of web bugs, because how you use them will determine which types of ones you're going to use. We've already done these two labs. So this feature with Word web bugs is actually built right into Core Impact. Long time ago. Core Impact is an old product. That's the first time that I ever really used it heavily in penetration testing. The first time I ever used the technique of using word web bugs in a real engagement with deception was a missing child's case. We had a girl that was missing. I think she was like 8 or 9 years old. And I got approached by law enforcement. They're like, are there any hacking techniques that you can use that'll help us identify and find where this little girl is? The problem was we knew who had the little girl, and we knew he had her because he changed his Skype avatar to be a picture of the girl crying. And of course, it's another one of those situations where the kidnapper was a family friend, right? And the fact that he was communicating with the family or was communicating with one of his friends over Skype was further complicating it, because at that time, Skype, if you asked and you gave them a warrant, they would say, no, we're not going to give you any information on where anybody is. They didn't care if it was a missing child. They didn't care about any of those things at all. So because he was communicating with one of his friends in the family, we could communicate via Skype, and we created a Word document that had a Word web bug built into it. And his friend sent them the document and said, hey, dude, there's a warrant out for your arrest. There's multiple news stories. They're in this document. What the hell is going on? And the suspect opened up the Word document. We got a beacon back, and we were able to get the little girl back. Now, if you have an IP address and you have a warrant, you can go to the internet service provider, and if you provide them the IP address, date, timestamp, and the source port, they can actually get you really, really, really super accurate geolocation. And in this situation, we were able to track the suspect and the little girl back to a hotel in Kansas City. Now, that particular story, I have people from time to time that say things like, well, but, if you didn't get a warrant, you wouldn't be able to do that and all those different things. What's funny about that story is no one gave a shit about getting a warrant at that particular point. Why? What's your number one concern? Get the kid, right? But I also go back to signaling versus content data. We were authorized, I could have dropped malware on his computer system, but by getting that signaling data, that ability for us to actually track where they were from, it allowed me to bypass getting a warrant because the only thing I was doing is having a Word document beacon back for a 1 pixel by 1 pixel image, right? That's true, exigent circumstances. So what was in that document? Well, this isn't the exact same, but it's actually really damn close. A lot of people don't know this, but Microsoft Word in doc files is a web browser. And in this situation, we do HTML head. You wouldn't type this into the Word document in Word. You would create a new document in VI, all right? And you would put in head HTML or HTML head, and then you would reference a style sheet that is hosted at an IP address of your choosing. And then you can put in what a buggy document, and you can put in an image source tag that's a 1 pixel by 1 pixel like image, and then it'll reach back and try to pull that back too. And that's pretty much it. And that works really well. And if they open it, all they see is what a buggy document. They're not going to see all of the HTML because the only thing that's rendering is the text inside of that document. So that's how we got the girl back. And that's really the beginning of all of this for me, is like I can use offensive techniques from a defensive perspective as well. When you get the full response, it actually looks like this. You get a request received, you get the IP address. This is the get request, the user agent string saying it's Microsoft Word, and it's a direct connection. And the amount of people that actually use like the onion routing for Word documents is like next to nothing. We just don't see that very much at all. You can go further using this exact same technique. It works in ObbyWord, works in LibreOffice, Apple TextEdit, and Microsoft Word as well. Now, how would you use this in the enterprise, right? We want to stack our cyber deception on top of each other, where we would have Word web bugs that are beaconing and calling back. We'd put them on honey shares like we did on the previous lab, but we also may want to put in some additional alerting and logging around that particular file when it's executed. Now, on Windows, you can enable something called object and file auditing enabling. And what that does is it creates a log file whenever somebody accesses a directory or a file of your choosing. So this is a way of creating any Word document, any file, any share in a Windows environment and having it act like a tripwire. And we're going to have the next lab, we're going to be doing that as well. All right, so cyber deception on the cheap. It's really, really hard for people to get. It's really, really hard. Somebody said, isn't there a way that a document can run VB code? Weems, we're going to show you how to do that. You can load macros. I generally don't use Word documents for macros. I generally put them in Excel spreadsheets. We'll talk more about that when we get there. All right. So there's a bunch of companies out there that sell a whole bunch of cyber deception products, and that's fine. Got the hiccups now. And that's good. But the problem is getting management approval and buy-in on actually buying cyber deception technology. And that's where it gets a little problematic. So what I recommend you do is you actually set up some cyber deception and attributional components, and you do it in a way that's super simple. Creating a Honey user account, creating a Honey file. We're going to show you how to create a Honey file in Active Directory here in just a couple of seconds. The point is you're doing all these things these commercial products do, but you're doing it really, really cheap so you can show value to management so that they can come in and dump more money in it. So some examples: Active Directory Honey admin account. So whenever we create Honey admin accounts and environments, one of the things we enjoy doing is just giving it a really obvious name. Now, sometimes people say, well, if it's too obvious, the attackers won't go for it. That's bullshit. I got to be honest, whenever we're looking at admin accounts that are out there, you always get admin accounts that are admin, like, what is it? Like ICS admin, PCI admin, credit card admin. Like they give it very, very, very explicit names. So in my example here, I have admin ADM administrator. I'm not pulling any punches on this at all. Now, the trick is trying to disable that account without disabling that account. You see, if you disable the account completely, the attacker's tools will bypass and skip over that account because that attribute is readable. If anybody's using any type of LDAP Explorer tools, they can look at those accounts and they can see that those accounts are disabled. So what you want to do is set it up so the account is enabled, but you set its logon hours to be blank. So in this logon hours, you can disable all logon hours across the entire environment so no one can ever log in. So this is a way of disabling account without actually disabling the account as well. The other thing you do is set up some type of SIM. When I did this webcast, I set up a simple Kiwi a Kiwi log server. So I didn't do any magic tricks or anything with it. It's just here's a log server, right? And now if an attacker does something like a password spray, which we did earlier in this lab or in this class, we did a password spray, it's going to generate an alert that somebody's trying to log in as admin ADM administrator. Question. Does that just block interactive logon also using these creds for PowerShell? No, it means that if there's any authentication that comes via Kerberos, via Kerberos, it will not allow that particular account to log into anything. The only way that you could get to log into it is if you logged into it, you had cache credentials enabled on a system, and then you shut down the domain controller. Then at that point, the cache credentials would take precedence because the domain controller was not available. But most of the time, the domain controller is there. All right. So we got a couple of stupid blue team tricks we're going to go through, and then we're going to do another quick lab. So one of the dumbest things you can do that just messes with attackers and their backdoors, especially if you're worrying about ransomware and them encrypting sensitive files, is you can use this stupid infinitely recursive directory loop trick. So what happens is you create a symbolic link for a directory that's referencing that directory itself. So what happens is you go into a directory. Let's just go ahead and do that. I'll just go through and do this. Let's go cd to the top level directory. And we're going to do make dir, and we're going to do go away like that. And then once we're in that directory, what we're going to do is we're going to make a link. We're going to create a soft link, mk link. We're going to give it D, and we're going to call it dir1. Oh, did I mess up that one? Oh, no, I've got to get it where it's going to. Of course, there we go. And we're going to go to C, go away. There we go. Now we have a symbolic link. So now if I do dir inside of that directory, you can see that I have the dir1 link that's going to the go away directory, and I completely screwed this up. Never mind the man behind the curtain and what I did wrong there. Never mind. There we go. That's better. You have to actually be in that link to create that. So now if I do dir, you can see I have a symbolic link in the go away directory that's linking to the go away directory. So if I do dir space /s for recursive, it goes through and it pukes all over itself, and it just doesn't work. Now, why? Well, the reason why is on Windows systems, whenever you create a symbolic link, it appends that directory onto the end of that link, and it does it up until the point it gets to 128 characters. Once it gets to 128 characters, it just gives up. So to get around that problem, you create a second symbolic link in the exact same directory. So now we have dir1, dir2, both are going to the go away directory. And now if you do dir space /s, it does this. It just spins and spins and spins forever. Now, this is really awesome because if you ever have an attacker that's breaking into an environment and they're trying to automatically go through and look through the directory looking for certain files, secret files, if you put this trick in the environment, their malware will get stuck on this. It'll just run forever. And if they hit Control C like I just did, Control C will actually kill their implant, which I think is awesome as well. Oh, there were hack the box boxes that you were using that trick? Oh my God, that is so cool. I'm glad that Hack the Box did something like that. So let me guess, you're supposed to get into a file and do a search. And if you did that, it would totally hose you over. Good to know. Good to know. All right. Now, there's some additional tools and utilities you can use, like deploy deception is a pretty good one. And what this does is deploys deception across a number of different Active Directory components. This is the last time I'm running this class of the Windows 10 VM. The next version is going to be on a server 2022, and we're actually going to have a deploy deception lab built into it because you can't deploy this on a standard workstation. It doesn't work that way. Additional tools, Cred Defense Toolkit is a tool that's created by Black Hills Information Security that adds in all kinds of deception for link local multicast name resolution and Kerberos style attacks and so on. Some more tools that are out there. If you're working in Sentinel, you can actually use Attribution in Sentinel. This is a 1-hour webcast by Jordan at Black Hills Information Security that you can look at as well. So we got a bunch of different things. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the next lab. And that lab is file audit. So with file audit, what we're going to do is we're going to create a directory called secrets. Then you're going to create a file called secret. Secret, I got a secret. And then you're going to go on to local security policy, audit policy, object, or audit object access. And you're going to enable for success and failure. Then you're going to go to your secret Word document and you're going to go to the security tab and then select advanced. And then you're going to enable auditing on that file. You're going to select a principal for that and who it'll apply to. And you're going to set it to users and everyone in that entire environment. And then you type in something, just type something into the file. And then if you go to Event Viewer and you look at the security logs, you go to event ID, what is it off the top of my head? 5156. It's going to show you that someone accessed that file. There you go. So this is a way that you can turn on a tripwire and you can turn any directory and any file into that tripwire. All right, so let's set 30 minutes on the clock. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about attack for a little bit. And then we're going to close out for the day, closing out the class. All right, get rolling. If you need any assistance, please let us know. 30 minutes on the clock. All right, here we go. Last little section of the class, everybody. Coming up on the end. Parting is such sweet sorry. All right, so let's move on and let's talk about attack. Earlier in class, somebody asked, is there any way that we can have Word documents where we can put in Visual Basic applications into the Word documents? And oh man, it's all froze up as well. All right. And I said that we would talk about that. All right. So if you look at talking about putting malware into Excel spreadsheets or Word documents, I much prefer putting malware in Excel spreadsheets. The reason why I like putting malware in Excel spreadsheets is everyone is very, very sketchy about anytime there's a Word document that has any macros in it. People seem to be really, really well trained on that. So the first thing that you got to do is convert your malware into a VBA. One of the cool utilities that's built into Metasploit is this tool called exe to VBA, and it will do exactly that. It'll convert any executable into a Visual Basic application. Now, once you actually get it as a Visual Basic application, you can put it into a Word document into any way that you can enable, and you can put macros into an Excel spreadsheet, into any of those different things. So let me show you kind of what macros look like and how they actually fire. So this is a macro. All right, so this is a macro that exists right here. And in this particular macro, what does it do? Okay, so this one is actually going through and it will pull down all of the wireless networks nearby. So it does PowerShell, NetSH, WLAN, show networks mode equals BSSID. Then it'll find that channel. Then it writes it into a file called Wi-Fi DAT, and then it converts it to base 64 and sends it up to a server of your choosing. Now, that may be like an eyes bleeding type thing, but we actually have a utility that does that for you. It's called Honey Badger. Now, Honey Badger was originally written by one of our employees that worked here at the time by the name of Tim Tomes. And the reason why we created this particular tool is because we were doing attribution of special forces people. It was basically we were doing some stuff in some sensitive sites and some sensitive locations. And the question was, could you actually do attribution on non-attributable terminals that they had? So we demonstrated that we could do that, and hence Honey Badger was actually born. So basically, anything that can do any type of wireless location allows us to actually do that Honey Badger style technique. Now, what we're hooking in to get the geolocation, though, once we get the wireless location, the wireless access points, is we feed all of those wireless access points, those BSSIDs or their MAC addresses. We feed all of those up to Google. And I like doing this because if we feed all of these things directly into Google, what it effectively does, if we ever get into a situation where we're in court, we can basically be like, Your Honor, or ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we aren't doing anything that your phone isn't doing hundreds of times an hour. We're using the exact same APIs that Google does. You just have to have a location API to actually do this, and it'll give you the latitude and longitude of it. So here's some things that we discovered over the years. These are a mix of my servers and Tim Tomes' servers. But right here, this is one of Tim's servers. Sure enough, there was an attacker that was trying to get access to one of his systems, and they were directly in Moscow. That was pretty funny, actually. That was before the Ukrainian war, before things got really, really, really weird. But yeah, it's just timely, I guess. So what do we receive whenever we receive the callback? So it's been like this for a long time. It does base 64 encoding, and when you decode it, this is what the logs actually look like. It actually shows you those SSIDs. And it'll show you the signal strength of those MAC addresses for those access points as well. And then Google comes back and it says, hey, this is within 128 meters. And this is the level of accuracy we have, latitude and longitude. We got a whole bunch of examples that we did. We had some people in Melbourne. This is Tim's old house. Of course, there's Moscow again. We had some people in Kyiv. This is one that was a student in Pepperdine University that was trying to break into one of Tim Tomes' servers that we were using here at BHIS. And you can see it got his name, username, the host name, latitude and longitude, which is really, really darn accurate geolocation. Now, to get an attacker to run it, you can put it inside of a Word document. You can put it inside of an Excel spreadsheet. You can put it inside of a fake VNC viewer application. Now, I'm going to go back to Shodan again. And this is kind of getting towards the end of my time at the SANS Institute. Towards the end of me working at the SANS Institute, things got a little dicey on a couple of different things. One of them, they had someone that tried to steal one of my class, or tried to steal SANS 504 for me the week that my mom passed away. That sucked. The other thing that happened is I had this class, and we used to run this at the SANS Institute as a SANS course. And two things happened. Well, one thing that happened is we taught this class for an on-site for one of our customers at the SANS Institute. And we were showing you how to insert this malware inside of a Java applet and all those things. And for VNC, and we had the people like, well, that's old. Well, that's old. Why would anybody run anything that's old? Why? I don't get it. It's old. It's old. Well, there's still 1,065 systems out there that Shodan has identified that are still running, VNC viewer, and you can access them through a Java applet. The point is, you don't want to be cutting edge. Attackers are constantly looking for old things. And if you can trick them into running malware from old things, that becomes an incredibly powerful technique as well. So, um, so a long, long, long time ago, I got a request to go do some security work at a big, scary bank. You knew it was a big, scary bank because it was a German bank, and all German banks are big, scary banks. And we were doing some other security stuff for them. It was weird. I had a number of gigs in Germany. I had some in Munich. I had some in Frankfurt. Oddly enough, I didn't have any in Berlin, which is kind of weird. But try to get out there quite a bit. And we were doing some work for about 2 weeks. And when we went out there, my wife actually booked our hotel room and got a hotel room that was really, really super close to the site. The customer was like, "Oh, you need to stay at the Hilton." We looked at the price of Hilton hotel rooms, and those were stupid expensive. And we're like, "No, no, we're not going to stay there." So she found someplace else. And we got off the train and started walking. It was right next to the train station, which was great. And it turns out the hotel was in the red light district. It was one of those really, really classy hotels. It wasn't a hotel, it was an hotel because the O, or sorry, the H was burnt out. They catered to English speaking people, which is kind of crazy. When we showed up, there was a gate. Like you had to push a button to unlock a gate to get to the door to get in. Once again, classy place. And when we walked up, they said, "Oh my God, you have children," and started yelling and talking to each other. And they went and put new carpet in our hotel room. Well, the lady that was incredibly nice made snacks for my wife, kids, and I. And when we got into our rooms, there were two rooms adjoining. We got all settled in, and sure enough, there was new carpet, and it was really poorly put in. It was just nasty, nasty, like kind of cuts. And like, get the kids tucked in. My wife and I are tucked in. We're like, "What the hell did we just do?" And just straight up, the guy comes bursting into our room. One of the owners comes up right next to me and he goes, "Don't let the kids turn on the televisions." And then walks up and unplugs the TVs. So yeah, each the TVs, like every channel had a different like type of porn on it. But we spent 2 weeks there at that hotel. And after 2 weeks at the big scary bank with me running some cyber deception stuff, this is what we had. Now, this had everything that was straight up. It was no index, no follow. It was not on the main web page. I can't remember. I want to say it's like 250 or roughly 250 different hits from around the world of people actively trying to hack into this bank. And we just set up Honey Badger in some various places. This isn't even what I was sent there to do, actually. And when we talk about threat intelligence, we went through when we cross-referenced all of these. We cross-referenced all of these ASNs, kind of the neighborhood of IP addresses for every single one of these different networks, and we found 4 systems at the bank that were compromised and were not detected through standard anti-malware, firewall, IDS, IPS technologies. And this is really what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, we should be looking at cyber deception as threat intelligence. Cyber deception as threat intelligence, because we can use cyber deception to identify things like this, where we can identify attackers and attack profiles that otherwise just would never have manifest at all. This is another old one. This is a number of years ago. Gosh, this has got to be over a decade now. We had first started setting up Honey Badger on a number of servers, and one of my friends, Chris Breton, who works with me now and is the CEO of Active Countermeasures, and Active Countermeasures has cyber deception built into it. By the way, he he set it up on a server that they took over. So one of their customers, the place where he was working at before, Black Hills Information Security, had a server that was hacked, handed it over to Chris Brenton. And then Chris Brenton and we sat down on the server. We changed all the default passwords of the server. And then we set up VNC applet to authenticate to the server. And we were able, over the course of 24 hours, to get the location and wireless location of all the people that were in charge of the botnet, because the server was being used as a botnet controller. And this was kind of interesting because we were able to hand this over to law enforcement. We were like, here, these people, these are the ones that are running this botnet and this hacker group. And law enforcement just didn't know what to do with it. They had never really gotten that level of accuracy before for what attackers are doing, and they just did nothing, which I thought was kind of great, like kind of scary, right? So I want to kind of pull this back down as we close out for today. And yeah, and Chris Brenton has a whole bunch of classes with anti-siphon and does pay what you can as well for network threat hunting level classes, and they're absolutely phenomenal classes. So kind of recapping where we're at. Active defense is the employment of limited offensive actions and counter hacks to deny a contested area to an enemy, right? And this is really fundamentally different from a standard passive defense. And if there's one thing that you've gotten out of this class, I'm hoping, it's the fact that there is a lot of active things that you can do as a defender that'll make an attacker's life absolutely miserable. And offensive countermeasures is really trying to use offensive techniques with a defensive posture. So when I use word web bugs on the inside of an environment, it's set up so here. It's set up so it's in such a way that if an attacker interacts with this document, it beacons back. And if you have a warrant, you can set it up so if an attacker interacts with this document, it basically can fully compromise that attacker system and beacon back, right? Only if, of course, if you have a warrant. So we're kind of using and reflecting some of these things back against the attackers. And this ultimately goes back to that OODA loop, right? That OODA loop is basically trying to destroy an attacker's successful ability to observe. And attackers don't know how to deal with it if their OODA loop is broken. Usually the attackers are really, really used to super solid observational capability. And it just works for us to be able to destroy their concept of operations and how they actually work and their TTPs, their tools, techniques, and procedures. And we're looking constantly at the detection time, reaction time, and attack time, right? How can we mess with the attacker's attack time? If you don't have the techniques that we discuss in this class, then you really don't have any ability to mess with the attacker's ability to successfully attack your network, right? When you're starting to use deception, when you're starting to get into the OODA loop, when you're starting to get inside of those things, now we're dramatically increasing the amount of attack time required to successfully break into an environment, right? And cyber deception does not replace other layers of your defense. I cannot stress that enough. You know, whenever people are like, oh, well, we got firewalls, IDS, IPS, what can we get rid of because we're bringing in cyber deception? None of those things. The goal of this class is to create cyber deception in such a way that it's super easy to deploy. Like if you're looking at word web bugs, if you're looking at files, you're looking at folders, you're looking at these different things, we're creating that poison. We're spreading that poison across the entire environment. And all of those poison components are established as low interaction honeypots, things that require very little effort for us to maintain and keep going on a day-to-day basis. But the payoff is incredibly high because as soon as the attacker starts going through and starts doing a password spray, then our honey account triggers. If the attacker is trying to pull down word web bugs in our environment, then those trigger, and it gives us some attribution for the technologies on that environment as well. So we don't replace anything. We augment and butter us those things in our environment. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to change the game. And just so you know, we are seeing this at Black Hills Information Security. Whenever we do penetration tests, we're seeing our customers more and more implementing cyber deception in their environments to mess with my penetration testers. And like I say on a regular basis, it's like anytime my pen testers start crying or they start complaining, like, oh, the tester, oh, they had cyber deception. I'm like, just bottle those tears and ship them to me. Your tears mean the best, they make the best wine, right? So it's just fantastic as a capability for us to be able to finally make things appreciably different and harder for pen testers breaking in. So we're disrupting that OODA loop. We're messing with DT, RT, and AT. We're trying to get away from the easy button. And honestly, I got to be honest with you, it's fun. Like whenever you start implementing these little traps and pitfalls inside of the environment, it's a lot more fun than just like, I sit here and I watch my sim all day long, waiting for something bad to happen. Butteress. And I love this little quote, caution. This is Sparta. This is your house, right? This is your house. And that is the class. Now, Megan, we have a couple of things that we need to do. I think that we have bingo cards. So, what do we have for our grand bingo winner today?
Well, they're going to win the free 1 year on demand. And hold on, people are still pinging me. So give me like a minute.
Gotcha. You
Two
want
shakes
some?
of a
All right.
lamb's tail, like you like to say.
All right. So here's the deal. As Megan's calculating and trying to define who is the winner of all of this, and I want you to kind of like acknowledge a couple of things as we kind of roll out a class, right? We do pay what you can training here at Anti-Siphon, and I do pay what you can classes. Chris does pay what you can. There's a number of us that do pay what you can. One, I would be greatly appreciative if you would remember Anti-Siphon for your future training needs. I'm being a little bit more blunt about this, but we are sans quality at like a tenth to 5% of the sans cost. And if you don't believe that we're sans quality, was a senior sans instructor. I have multiple sans fellows that are instructors for us. We have people like Joff. There's a ton of sans instructors that are here. So if you want to get that quality, we are that quality at an affordable rate. All right, so please keep that in mind. The next thing that I want to call out is when we do the cyber deception class, we do intro to SOC core skills, we do intro to security, we do all of these different things. My primary goal is no longer like trying to make as much money as I possibly can. Don't get me wrong, money's nice, that's great. Puts kids through college, it's awesome, right? But at the end of the day, I'm doing fine. I'm not going to starve, so that's great, right? But we do these classes for a number of reasons, especially my introductory level classes. We do the introductory level classes because it is almost impossible for people to get into this field. It truly is. And how many of you are actively trying to get a job in computer security, but they all want certifications? They all want all of these different things. And you just can't get everything that you need to be able to get that job. Okay. First and foremost, I want to apologize profusely on the part of the security community, even though the security community doesn't give a shit. The overall security community is constantly looking for magical unicorns, right? They're constantly trying to get people that know all of these different things, and of course, they want everyone to come into an entry level job with zero experience. And when we look at this field, it's kind of weird to me. It's kind of like F you got mine. Because a lot of the people that got started in computer security were kind of socially awkward people. And under normal conditions, they probably would have been janitors. But it just so happens that the awkward people that are kind of nerdy happened to land in a specific time in history where technology exploded. We were all able to get jobs and have all kinds of different cool cons that we could go to. And that's good for us. And then as soon as we get into the computer security industry, it's almost like we pulled up the ladder behind us. And why did we pull up the ladder in the industry behind us? Because the more we can make computer security elite skill, it's kind of like NoFX. It's my job to keep punk rock elite. The more that we can keep information security elite, the more we can keep the wages high, the more we can get prestige in the industry. And that kind of pisses me off. Because at the end of the day, we're getting our asses kicked in the industry. I mean, the news today, or sorry, the news last Monday, InfoSec, BHIS talking about InfoSec news is just depressing. It's breach after breach after breach. Organization coming out with new guideline and new standard and all this stuff, and nothing's getting better. And really, if we want to solve the problems, I think that the solution to every single problem that we have in life is education. I truly believe that deep down in my soul. And then we couple that with other issues in information security. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the vast majority of information security looks like me, middle-aged white dudes, right? And if you're a middle-aged white dude, I'm not ripping on middle-aged white dudes. There's plenty of reasons to rip on middle-aged white dudes. Don't get me wrong, but diversity matters. And there's people out there that like to talk about it like, well, what does diversity actually do for me, right? Your entire life is nothing but a testament as a human being to diversity. Everything from your music to your art to your mathematics to science, everything is this monster testament to us as a diverse species. In fact, I would argue that humans' main trait that makes us successful is diversity. And it not necessarily built just upon male, female, black, white, gray, whatever, religion or any of that. It's literally human beings. There's somebody out there that loves pens, right? There's people out there that, they're all about pens and pen caps and making a better ballpoint pen. And then you have somebody that's really into nuclear reactors, and you have people that are into computer security. Human beings' strength comes from our diversity and our thought. And whenever we're looking at diversity, we try with all of these different things and trying to make it more diverse. And most organizations try. And by the way, as I go into this, I just want you guys all to note that I'm not ripping on people's intentions. Okay. But you have a number of different organizations that are like, you know what, we need more diverse people. We're going to set up scholarships for Black people or Pacific Asians, or we're going to set up for women, or we're going to set it up for all these different things. And as much as I love the fact that their heart is in the right place, it doesn't change the effing game. And when we were all sitting around, Megan, myself, Velda, a bunch of us, we were like, how can we increase diversity in computer security? Should we do scholarships? And I didn't like scholarships. I didn't like them at all. I understood the heart and the intention and all of those different things. But what we realized after having conversations about this is diversity always boils down to one thing, and that's the gate of money. That's it, money. Instruction is incredibly expensive. Whenever you're looking at classes to get into computer security and certifications to get into computer security, it's all about how much money can people make on certification programs. We just had, what was the one? CompTIA was sold last week, which was really cool because they were a nonprofit. Well, that shit's gone because now they're going to try to make as much cash as they possibly can. It always comes down to money as that barrier. And if you want to break down the barrier for men, women, people of different ethnicities, people of different sexualities, people of different religions, you don't break it down by going through and doing all these different scholarships. You burn it to the ground at the source for everyone. Because you have people in Appalachia that are poor white people. You have people in South Dakota, which is like one of the most poor states in the union, that'll never get the opportunities that other people get. You have people in in inner cities. You have people of a variety of different ethnicities whose families have never had an opportunity to go to college because they couldn't afford it. So how do we deal with this? We burn it all to the ground by creating pay what you can training. And that's why you're here. And I want to call out a couple of groups of people. The first group of people I want to call out are the people that paid. For those of you that paid to be at this certification, I want to say thank you so much, because if it weren't for you, we can't do this. We can't put on this training. We can't, because it costs money, right? Like, I have to eat, Megan has to eat, Ryan has to eat, we have to eat, and these people pay, and they don't have to. And I think that those are beautiful people. We talk about BHIS and totally not a cult. If I was going to start a cult, my cult would break down to three core principles. Number one, be nice. Number two, be especially nice to the people you hate. And number three, tip well. But those are the things that we would really try to set up as the guiding principles if we were going to set up a cult. And there are people that pay when they don't have to pay. And I just want to say thank you. There's another group of people that are here that did not pay. And don't worry, this isn't going where you think it's going to go. It's not a matter of shaming people and all those different things. But there's a number of you here that didn't pay. And I grew up in a family. Megan grew up. We have Velda grew up. I mean, I could go down all of BHIS, blue collar. And, I remember my mom working 2, 3 jobs just to make ends meet when my dad got hurt. I remember my mom working in food service, and we would eat the food from the cafeteria that she worked at because we couldn't afford food. I remember using duct tape to hold my shoes together because I could not afford shoes. And I understand when people talk to you and they say things like, really, you can't afford $20? No, there are people out there that cannot afford $20. And for the people that chose to be here, right? And we say that you didn't pay or you took the class for free. You didn't take the class for free. You paid in the one thing that you give to the world, and that's your time. And your time is constantly calculated in terms of minimum wage. Your time is constantly calculated and divided by the total amount of tips that you collected. Your time is constantly calculated in the time that you're allowed to give your physical labor because that is the sole determination of who you are. And I don't count your time based on that. I count your time on what you gave up. Because when you have people that are working multiple jobs, when you have people that are working minimum wage, whenever they take a class like this, they take time off, and that means money out of their pockets. When they take a class like this right before Christmas, that means fewer Christmas presents. That means less time with their family. And I think everybody that is in this webcast owes them a round of thanks as well, and a round of applause saying thank you to them because they gave the most precious thing that they have in that they gave themselves. And I want to say thank you so much. And for those of us that are on this side of the screen, nothing matters as much to us is the conversations that we have with you all when you finally make it in information security, when you finally get here and you come to our conferences and you come up to Megan or you come up to me and you're like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but my company paid for me to be here. And we're like, that's the way it is. Welcome to the club. Nothing makes us happier than talking to people. I had this one lady that literally, I broke down in tears. It's going to be hard to get through it. But we had this lady that came up to us in Reno, Nevada. And she told this story about taking this class. She took a bunch of the pay what you can training. She put it on her resume. She got her job. She got benefits. She got health insurance. And then right after she got the job and she got health insurance, she found out that one of her children had cancer. Now, the cancer was treatable, and thank God the child was fine, but she finally had the health insurance that enabled that kid to get the treatment that they needed to deal with it. I, I don't give a shit how much money I make in the rest of my life. Those are the things that are going to keep me warm in my waning days of my life. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for doing this and being part of this. Also, I do have a small request before we get to the bingo winner. Help us amplify the signal. Whenever we have these classes up, you all know people that have the technical aptitude. Maybe they don't have the opportunity to get into this industry. Please do me a favor and help us amplify on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Not maybe not Twitter so much anymore, but like Mastodon or Blue Sky, wherever it
Blue
is. If
Sky,
you're on
yeah.
Reddit, help us amplify the signal and help us continue helping people out. And just help us get it out there as much as you can. All right, Megan, who do we have as a winner?
Okay. Before I say that, we will be sending out the certificates of completion. So that's a really good way to amplify the message and share that out. They'll go out overnight tonight as long as you registered. So for those of you that joined on the streams, the registration is still open. So go and register and you will get the certificate of completion overnight tonight. With that, we do have a winner. You ready? Is there
Let's
a
do it.
drum roll? Come on, like Christmas vacation. Anyway, Le Lepec.
Hooray!
Is that is that how you pronounce
I think
it?
you're gonna have to type it in actually
Yeah,
in
yes,
Discord.
there.
There it
I
is.
did pronounce it correctly. Yay! So I'll be sending
Congratulations.
you a
I
message.
love angels like congratulations.
Yeah.
So, but also, that's great. Awesome. Good.
I
All
will
right.
be sending you a direct message and getting your information so that we can get you set up with the on-demand. So you'll get the on-demand, all of the classes for 1 year as well as cyber range.
Also, I do want to give everyone a heads up. We are coming out with, we have the mechanics built for pay what you can certification. So we are coming out with an anti-siphon core skills. It's going to be the ACE-T core certification. So just sit tight. It's going to be coming out here, I think, in Q1. And anybody that's taken my classes will be able to get certified at like little to no cost. So you can put that certification on your resume. So a little bit of a Christmas present for y'all. This Christmas, I'm going to be working on the questions and getting it built out as well. The Android pen test class will be released in January, the week of
Sweet.
January. We'll be doing that course. So sit tight. It's coming. All kinds of good stuff. All right. Are we ready to wrap this up?
I think we are. It's been such a fun week. This class, I mean, I know we say this about a lot of our classes, but just the interaction, I absolutely adore you guys. You're so fun to hang out with, and it doesn't even feel like work. Um, we love you guys. So please come back. We're going to be having lots more classes. In the free and the pay what you can next year. And John will be, of course, doing his 3 classes. And we love y'all. And have a happy holidays, everybody. Whatever you celebrate, celebrate well.
Take care. Be safe.
All right, be safe, everyone. All right, Ryan, it's time to kill this thing with fire. Bye, y'all.